Hey everyone, happy Thursday again. I hope that you caught my Facebook Live this morning with Dr. Kristen. It was tons of fun. She was sitting outside, the birds were chirping, and so it's a pleasure to be able to come to you again. I've got Dr. Brian Dooley here with me from Sherman College, and many of you will know him.
Yes.
If you join us and you have had Dr. Brian as a professor, pop in the comment section and just tell him, hey, thank you for all that you do for us at Sherman. And maybe you can like pop in a funny story that you remember from when you were at Sherman that he was a part of, because we all, of course, like to laugh. So, Dr. Brian, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm sure, I'm a little scared about the stories. We'll see what happens.
Why do you think I asked that? I'm not a dummy.
No kidding. I like how you operate.
We'll have all kinds of fodder for,
Yes.
the future. So, hey, Dr. Jean, welcome. I will get an email response back to you shortly. What did you say?
I said, bring it on, students, whatever they got.
Bring it on, students. Yeah, so that's another thing that we'd like to do. When you join us, if you have a specific question that you would like us to answer about practice or chiropractic or how beautiful it is here in Alaska, I'm happy to answer that. But we can only interact with you when you put it in the comment section. So please feel free to do so. Hey, there's Katie, Dr. Katie. I'm sure you know. Katie, you just graduated, I think.
Yep.
So I met Katie at Lyceum, and she had just graduated. So this, I think, 2018. So awesome. All right,
yeah,
so let's go ahead.
No, she's not far from here, so good to see her here.
Hey, there's Tristan. Hey, Tristan.
No stories, Tristan. You're not a student. You can't tell your stories.
Yeah, Tristan, that's how I opened today. Was if you got any Dr. Brian Dooley stories, please feel free to put them in the comment section. There you go. Katie was last June. All right, so let's just start.
Sure.
How did you get here? You're in practice. You're also a teacher at Sherman. How did you get to this point?
Practice side of my career. And so I was a political science major in undergrad. And what that meant was A, I'm really good at Trivial Pursuit and Jeopardy. And then B, I needed to go back to school in something.
So when were you in college? What year?
And so Clemson University, I was from 1990 to 94.
Oh, so we were in college about the same time. I went to Michigan State. I had a couple of poli-sci classes, and other than like meeting a boyfriend in there, I eventually dated him. I don't remember anything positive for poli-sci, so I'm with you there. So keep going.
Yeah, what I learned was that's what I didn't want to do, and so then I guess she was my fiance at the time, so who's my wife now. So we moved to Atlanta. I worked in the movie business, building sets for TV commercials and movies. Ended up working for the Atlanta Braves for a little while. We moved back to South Carolina, was in radio, was in a few other things. And after being downsized a couple of times, I was driving by a chiropractor's office, and I thought, I can do that. I live in a blue-collar state, a lot of manufacturing going on around here, whether it's corporate, big manufacturing plants or other stuff. And what does it take to be a chiropractor? 6-9 months? And then that's what I thought back then. And then, so I had no idea of what the career really entailed. I started to look for schools. I had known about life, and because with our time in Atlanta, so we started thinking I could move back. We could all move back. My daughter had been born by now. Maybe I would go during the week. So whatever it is. And then there was this fine invention called the internet. And so I didn't Google back then. I Yahooed. So that's what we were using back then. Yeah. And so I looked up chiropractic colleges, and the first one to come up was someplace in Davenport, Iowa. And of course, at the time, I'm thinking, why in the world would you go to Davenport, Iowa? So I didn't even look at it, knowing about her. And life was there. But then the third one said Spartanburg, South Carolina. I asked my wife, I said, did you know about this place? Because she's from Gaffney, which anybody that's been in South Carolina is the land of the Big Peach. So if you're a House of Cards fan, that's where Frank Underwood's from. And so right next door to Spartanburg, and that's actually where Dr. Gilardi, who founded Sherman, lives now. And so she's like, oh, never did hear anything of it. So I contacted the school, and they had a career day. And so we went up for a career day, me, my wife, and my daughter. My daughter decided to act like she was 2 or 3. So my wife never came inside. And so I was inside thinking it'd be like an hour, but it was all morning into lunch. So my poor wife's waiting out in the parking lot with a quite cranky kid. And I'm inside, and the first talk I heard on chiropractic was from Dr. David Koch, and he starts talking about this thing called innate intelligence. I'm like, well, this is really awesome. And so that's kind of how I got into chiropractic. So that was about 97, 98 maybe. And so being a political scientist, I didn't have a lot of science classes. So I had to go back to school. And so I had a job. So I had 9 prerequisites to take. So I had to do college algebra, physics, chemistry, biochemistry, and who knows what else was in there. And so I finally got to Sherman in January 2002 was when I finally got my prerequisites done, because I would just take 1 class a semester, maybe 2, was all the time I could do. Was doing night school, and back then distance learning was different than it was now. So I was actually watching algebra on VHS cassette.
Right on. That was better than beta.
It was like barely. And so then I got to Sherman in 2002, graduated in 2005. I associated for 2 years. And then we had mutually decided it was time for me to move on. So I opened up my own practice in 2007, November of 2007, and I've been in practice ever since. And then, I was enjoying practice, but I really enjoyed my time at Sherman. And interestingly, Dr. Eric Russell got the job as the president out at New Zealand. And across my mind, by then Facebook's around, so I'm chatting with him a little bit. I met him through Sherman. I thought it'd be really cool to live in New Zealand. So I asked him, well, how did you get into education? And so he started teaching at community colleges, and then said, just be ready when the time comes. And so I started teaching anatomy and physiology lab at a community college. The first 2 classes I taught, after that second class, I'm literally sitting, looking at a computer, class is over here, and I'm looking at the computer, talking off the PowerPoint. And I thought, if I had me, I would really hate this class. And so it's like, I might be the worst teacher ever. And so I started thinking about what I liked that teachers did, and quite honestly, stuff that entertained me. And then teaching just got a little bit easier and easier. I got much better results. The students, most importantly, got the information they needed and seemed engaged. And I started thinking, boy, I really kind of like this. And then just went on Sherman's website. I said, well, if I'm going to teach, why don't I teach what I actually have my degree in? And so I started out in the health center working 1 day a week, and as an assistant doc, and then I got a call from our vice president of academic affairs, said, would you like to teach history and philosophy too? And if I was to pick classes to teach, those would be it. And I said, sure. And I live an hour away from Sherman, so I told them, as long as I'm done by 3 o'clock, just load up the schedule. So that led me to teaching patient ed, and now I do media communications and case history as well. I'll assist wherever they need. So my day's pretty full. Then I get in the car at 3. I'm here by 4. Then I practice 4 to 7, Monday through Thursday.
Wow. How many years have you been doing that?
About 5.
Wow. That's awesome. What dedication. Well, I mean, now that I've been there, I understand why you want to do everything that you can to be around Sherman, because that place is definitely, I mean, of course you're biased, but
right. Yeah.
But it's amazing.
Sherman colored glasses.
Yeah.
Well, it's fantastic. When I was in school, there was 189 students, and, it was sort of, on the edge. We had an influx when life had their unfortunate situation. So we got a bunch of students in, but it wasn't something that was built to be long term, because once life straightened things out, everybody went back to life, and so be it. But it was real exciting when I came up, and then the first assembly I had with Dr. Cordero, I listened to him go. I said, this is a leader of people. And so I sent him an email and I said, you don't know me yet, but I just wanted to say I was real impressed with the assembly. He sends within 5 minutes, he says, I want you to set up a time when we can speak. Okay, because I hadn't met him yet. And so next thing you know, probably within a day or two, or the next week maybe when I came back, I was in his office and he says, here's my vision. And if you're part of the vision, come along. And if you're not, then don't.
Nice.
But I said, I'm in. And so I like that he's a man of vision. And now that we're up to the 400 or so levels of students, but it's sustaining because it's every quarter now. And you see the construction that's going on is amazing. We've just I moved into my office. Super excited about it. The new classrooms are exciting. We're going to redo the other half of our old main building. And now our new student center is, a new piece of steel is up every day. So the change is just nothing but positive. And so I'm so thrilled and honored to be a part of the Sherman family, and to be able to come back and teach is fantastic.
And so in the years that you've been teaching, what is different about the students now versus like when we were in Chiro school? What do you notice are some of the big similarities and some of the big differences?
The differences between students now, I don't know, because I look back on it and, you hear, well, the millennials this and the millennials that, and there might be some of that. I think the big thing, when I was at school, the mindset was go to school, do school, and get out. Now the students want to hang out together. So they're a lot more communal, I think. They want to do, they like group stuff. They don't necessarily want to just hear me pontificate from the stage. They like activity. Yeah. And I love what I have to say. I don't know why they think that. Right. I'm terrific. But I
listen to myself the whole way to my office.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
That's
I'm
awesome.
my own favorite. I don't even do the podcast. I just talk to myself. Right. But they like to do, and they want to do work. They want to do work with each other. So that might be a big difference, to see that, and just today. So I'm going in to do an exam, but one of the students just says, hey, we got to get a picture. This is our last exam for whatever, fourth quarter. So before the exam, I'm taking a picture of the entire class. And so whereas in my day, I'd have said, forget the picture, I'm here to take the test.
Yeah.
So I like that about them, that they are much more of a communal group. So that might be, a big difference. The other difference might be they don't know my references, which is terrible. So we were talking in philosophy class about intelligence, force, and matter. So I'm showing a clip from Return of the Jedi because Yoda is great at it. And I looked out among the class and I Googled it, to see. Now I was Googling. I was no longer Yahooing.
Yeah.
And it was made in 1983. So I said, who here was born in 1983? One person raised his hand and said 1984. And I said, so nobody. And, so I have to be careful with my references because as near and dear to my heart, they're old to them. I showed The Godfather, the opening scene of The Godfather.
Yeah.
For networking. This is how to not. And so I looked out there. We're talking about the movie Godfather, and the people are just confused as they're looking at me. So hang on a minute. How many people haven't seen this movie? And like half the class's hands went up. And I said, forget everything what you're doing this weekend. Watch the movie.
Oh, yeah.
So for me, the challenge is to be current. So I use my daughter is 22, and so I can use her. What movies are you watching? Do I need to go see? And so then I'll go see, and I can use some of that stuff in class. So, yeah, there's a little bit of an age gap. I mean, I'm 46. I don't think I am, but I am. And so
that's what they tell me, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's what the birth certificate says. And so that's probably the big thing. But I do like I said, I think that the students are just way more communal. they do like to engage, that type of stuff. So that's what might be the difference between them and maybe when I was in school.
I'm so glad that you said positive things about the millennials, because I do think a lot of times they get a bad rap.
Sure.
And no matter what generation it is, they're going to be like the pluses of it and
Right.
the negative parts of it. So I'm really thankful that you went to that they are very community driven, and I feel like they're much more like we're all kind of like in this together, where
Yeah.
so I have a funny Logan story to tell you, and it
Sure.
only really be funny. So Barry Hobbs, if you're still on, you'll think this is funny because you knew the Ferries brothers. So there was there were three brothers. So Brad was a year ahead of me, Patrick was in my tri, and then Doug, the middle brother, was, I don't know, maybe a year and a half behind me. And they were all from Canada, just really, really awesome guys. And so I had like this whole group of Canadian dudes. That was my posse when I was in Chiro school. And that's who we all hung out with, right? So we had, I don't know if you guys did you have pass on like ponies? They were, so we had ponies. They were tests that individuals would either steal from, like a previous, trimester.
We had a file in the library.
Oh, we didn't have that, but but we had.
I shouldn't say that.
Yeah, right. It's still there.
Years ago. That was years ago, CCE. Years ago.
Right.
It's all legit now, I promise.
Yeah, and I don't even know why. Oh, about like the good and the bad, and so we're all in this. So our trimester 9, so we're almost done, and our X-ray. Well, I guess he taught diff die. And we're all in the gym. Like he made us spread completely out, so there was no chance anyone was going to cheat. And we weren't really supposed to have the ponies, of course, right? So Patrick's sitting there, and he's got them all laid out on his desk. And Dr. Kettner comes in, and he picks them up, and he says, "Dr. Ferries, what is this?" And Patrick's like, "They're called ponies. Like, do you not know about them?" And Dr. Kettner is like, very professional. And he says, "Well, where are your notes?" And Patrick's like, "Well, actually, if you could tell me which of these is going to be the test, it would just be so much easier to prepare." So needless to say, Dr. Kettner grabbed up all of the ponies. The exam was canceled, and the next day when we took it, I don't think anyone passed. So in other words, we weren't quite as community driven, because it was always like, we got this group of ponies and you guys don't have them, kind of thing. So, but I would think that the millennials nowadays, they would probably all share them, where we didn't do that so much. Hey, there's Dr. Liam. As president of the IFCO, I approve this message for my current CWA layer in Peru. Okay.
Well, fantastic. Well, hello.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Now we're official.
Now we're official. And Kim Smith, who is a student at Sherman, said, "Dr. Dooley, I'll get your references next quarter." Yeah, because she was like in college when we were. All right, so let's talk about this. Like, what do you love about teaching chiropractic history and chiropractic philosophy?
To start with the history, one of the questions I normally get in philosophy, so, the students will ask, with that community thing, in chiropractic, why can't we all get along? Take the history class, because it started in about 1902, And so what I like about it is so that the students can understand why we are where we are. And if they want to change, then they need to get involved and do something different. And so, and plus the story's great. I mean, it's just, does BJ run over Dee Dee in a car? The political stuff, you got chiropractors going to jail. It's just a great story. And so that's where I like, and teaching the history is to be able to say, this is what happened back then. How does it or does it not relate to practice today? And I think what they'll find a lot of times is that it does relate. And you can still use what was going around in 1920. Like BJ did lighted lectures, where he had glass panes that he would shine a light through. So he was doing the first PowerPoint when he did his talks.
That's
So
awesome.
he used the audio visual that he had.
Yeah.
His big thing, and I was reading not long ago in Bigness of the Fellow Within about his radio time, was where you want to be good in radio, you have to be interesting. And I tell the students, we have to be interesting with our patients. We have to be able to tell a compelling story in order for them to get under care. And so there's just ways, and how BJ did it in 1920s was really no different. It was different. But the students, I think, why does medicine hate us? I don't understand it. And it's like, well, they don't now, but here's what they actually did. And because we've got the books that have the papers. Here are the court cases. And, here's why the Palmer group and the national group butted heads. And the big thing with the history that I'm really glad to work with Simon Senzon with is just clean it up. At least if we start with the same facts. And then we can interpret it the way we want, I guess, and debate that. But at least the facts are the same. So that's fun to do that. And then Philosophy 2 class is the 33 principles. And that's just a blast because and so I love going through all the principles to see, students will come from a very allopathic / quote unquote, biologically or anatomically background. And because a lot of us, but that's not the only background that's out there. And just because that's what you're most familiar with doesn't mean it's the most correct. But let's look at these 33 principles and see, do you jive with them or don't you? And then let's have a debate about it while we're in class. What I like to do at the end of class is show a video of a man. He's getting adjusted, and not that he walked again, but his life greatly improved. And then I just write numbers 1 through 33 on all right, which principle do you see in that video? And every time so far, all the principles are erased by the end of the video. And so to be able to tell the students our 33 principles are not a history class. It's the basis of the profession. And so the fact that I get to teach, that is a absolute blast.
Yeah. Oh, Michelle says attractive character and storytelling. You got to have the attractive character in there, and in the mass movement, right? So mass movement, you got to have the charismatic leader, the cause, and the new opportunity. Sure. So here's a question I've been thinking of that I wanted to, ever since we scheduled this, I wanted to ask you.
Okay.
So what like famous person in our society now would embody who BJ was back in the day?
Well, I would probably go with like a Steve Jobs, which I know he's not around now, but somebody like that's willing to just think on the edge. And what's Apple? Think different. And so I think probably to me that might be one of the bigger ones. What I like that what is the big deal about Apple products is that they're simple and clean looking. And what's more simple and clean for the human body than a nervous system functioning at 100%? And so I think, so, the Apple folks, so maybe not just Jobs, but whoever's running the company now, like that just that it's complicated with these big words in Latin and it means this and you have this, but it really comes down to a nervous system free of the vertebral subluxation so that NH's doing its thing and it's simple and it's clean. So I guess for me it would be the Apple folks.
Nice. That would be an interesting study to do, is like the parallels of their life and like what they did that was on the edge, and how obviously Apple is a global movement that just goes bigger and bigger and bigger. And when at times when it has slowed down, what has been the cause of that versus when it starts gaining momentum again. And same with our profession, like what keeps us from being able to get out of our own way. So that's a question I have for you too. when I was in school, I remember everyone saying that we served about 10% of the population.
Right.
Most recently, I hear it's more like 8%. And I don't know, let's say it's 12. Who knows?
Right. Right.
What from an individual who is a practicing chiropractor and teaches history and teaches philosophy, and you're exposed to a lot, like especially with the poli-sci major. What do you think? Why do you think that is?
I think I think we're confused as a profession what we actually are. We have an identity crisis. So, ask the question on Facebook, define chiropractic. How many answers are you going to get? And then to the point, there is a subluxation, there's not a subluxation. Innate people are religious wackos, and, the other side is just MD wannabes. And so, if you want to go historical on it, so, the second school opens up and they start adding therapies, not out of maliciousness, just this is what the guy thought they ought to have. And so the argument is, do you have to have them or not? And there's still that argument. But you go to 1910 was the Kansas Act, and that was the Kansas Act was when we could write the first statute on what chiropractic was. What was nice was BJ got to write the statute, which was fine, but which was oddly enough, it was in Kansas and not Iowa. But the problem was what the Kansas Act also said was it left it up to the state to individually define what chiropractic was. So now you've got 50 definitions. I don't know how many states there were in 1910. It wasn't quite 50, but say 45 different definitions of possibly what chiropractic could be. You had a lot of medical doctors that decided they wanted another tool in their bag. And so that's why they went to chiropractic school. Again, not for malicious, we're going to get rid of it reasons, like, hey, we want to see can I use this with my patient? But they're still coming at it from that mindset of disease, not disease. And so I think when you couple that stuff together, we just never really settled into this is actually what we are. In Didi's book, somewhere in there, he said, I never felt the need to copyright the word chiropractic. I kind of wish he did. And at least he could just say, this is what it is, which he really has. But a lot of it's open for interpretation. Just look at the definition of chiropractic in Stevenson's textbook. You have all things natural, and that gets confused. You have by hand only, that gets confused. And then disease versus disease. So, we can say, oh, well, it says things natural in the definition, so I can use that, so I can add these other modalities to practice as long as they're natural. Well, that's not what BJ meant. But BJ didn't clarify it that he wanted to use natural for things to not be supernatural or like a religious experience. But he said that in 1958. If you're kind of like BJ, 30 years ago would have been fantastic if you could have said it then.
Yeah.
And so I just think we have an identity crisis is really, and it's internally. And so therefore the word doesn't get to the public. How many people, have you have a patient in your office and they'll say, why hasn't nobody told me this before about brain and nervous system and subluxations and things like that? And you look and they've been to a chiropractor, and that's unfortunate because, I stand by what we do. I don't need to be a physical therapist. I don't need to be a sports medicine guy. I think there's other people that are way better trained for those avenues. But there's nobody better trained than I am as far as locating, analyzing, correcting vertebral subluxation. And we just have to tell people this is what we do. It's easy to slide into the symptomatic type of thing. But then theoretically, by definition, aren't we practicing medicine at that point? And of course, they let us, quote unquote, have the low backs and the headaches because those tend to be whiny people and they don't pay a lot. So they're like, yeah, you guys can have them, why did all those chiropractors get jailed back in the day? And it's not because they were hurting people. It's because people were not going to the medical doctor because they were well. And so, here we are. And, it's kind of funny. We need to align ourselves with medicine. Well, why? They did try to exterminate us, and they do two different things. If somebody does need medical care, that's fine, but you're still going to be better off with the nervous system free of the subluxation in order to process whatever that universal force of medical care that comes in that is necessarily destructive unless innate can do something. Principle 26.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that there's a difference between aligning with medical doctors and respecting them. Like, you don't have to agree with what they do, but they do have a place.
Right.
Like, if I get attacked by a bear out here, please.
Right.
Yeah, I want to be adjusted, but I'm probably going to have some injuries that are a little more
Right.
extreme than what my chiropractor should be tending to. And I think that's
Sure.
one thing that would really help is, like, we're not in competition with them, because what we do is something completely different than what they do. And staying true to the principle
Right.
is the only way to really remain unique. And I always look at
Right.
it from a business and marketing standpoint. Being a subluxation based chiropractor, so like a commodity, and I'm not really saying this to you as much as the audience, right? So if you like, you always want to decommoditize yourself, because if you're seen as a commodity, you're the same as everybody else, and usually the only differentiating factor then is price. So a great way to differentiate yourself then is be subluxation based, because there aren't, even in a city of 100 chiropractors, sadly, there probably aren't a lot of subluxation based chiropractors. So that in and of itself differentiates you and starts to decommoditize you. And when you're decommoditized, you get to not only name your price, it's your bat, your ball, your game. And when people are like comparing, like in their pot of healthcare, of modalities and all this kind of stuff, you're not even in that pot of consideration for their healthcare dollar, because what you're doing is so completely different. It's like the difference between, I'm going to sit and watch my kids' game today in a lounge chair with the sun shining on me versus, I'm going to Fiji.
Right.
Like, to me, that's like as close as they are. So if you want to be the Fiji, be subluxation based. But what's your opinion?
Well, I totally agree. And, the thing, I don't like the term principled chiropractor, because everybody has a set of principles. And whether we agree with them or not, everybody's got a set. The other side of it is, I would dare you, if you hear a principled chiropractor, ask them if they know one, just one of the principles. So they'll know number 6, because that's time. Everybody knows that one. But imagine if we all knew the principles, that we could have our debates within that fishbowl, if you will. Because we don't know it, it's easy to just have maybe a wider focus than we need to have. And that's what I like about the principles. To me, just keep me as far as, keeping my boat off the rocks. The thing I hear, especially from students, patients don't understand the word subluxation. It's difficult to say. And so I said, all right, everybody now, subluxation, right? It's not that hard. They don't understand the concept, and it's not that the patient doesn't understand, it's that the chiropractors don't. And that's not that they're ignoring it. Maybe they've never been taught it. Being on a mission trip opens your eyes a little bit. To some people, they have a philosophy club about innate on campus and those types of things. And even though the chiropractor, we kind of agree with you, but we can't teach it that way. And so that just leads things to be a mess, and they get confused as students. So then when you get out into the public, what's your message going to be? And they have no idea. And it's real easy then to say, all right, let me slide into this other camp and deal with the symptomatics, conversation to have. But what I have found was, you talk to your patient, you make your rapport, what brings you in here, here's how this office is going to help you. There's this thing called and I don't try to get in my earlier years, mistake, I'm trying to put 3.5 years of chiropractic school into 15 minutes of a new patient orientation.
Right.
And so now it's just like, this is the thing I'm looking for. Here's what it does. Here are the things that I'm going to use. Are you in or are you out? And, more often than not, like 99% of the time, yeah, sure, sounds great.
Right.
And so I try to be upfront so they get it if we tell them.
Yeah. And it's so much less confusing. Like, if you think about it, subluxation is so much less confusing than all of the the diseases. Like I remember sitting in chiro school, maybe you felt this way too, and like they'd be talking about diseases. I'm like, oh my gosh, I think I got that. Like, oh my gosh, I got
I
that,
got
and I
all
got
these.
that, and I got
Yeah.
right. Like,
Yeah.
and I wasn't a hypochondriac, but you like start hearing symptoms, and like it seems
Yeah.
like every condition has like definitely some very similar symptoms related to it. So like that's the confusing things in my opinion for individuals. But if they can go, you know what, I'm subluxated, like this isn't talking well down here and I gotta go see my chiropractor. Like how much easier is that than for them to try to explain, so what is the difference between IBS and ulcerative colitis and Crohn's? And I don't even know. They all affect down there and you don't want it.
Yeah.
How about that? You know,
Well,
like
yeah, that's about it. Yeah.
that's
But if you have it and you need intervention, then I want to make sure the conductor running my body can get the messages through and process that intervention as well as possible.
yes.
And I try to tell the students, if you just, it's not my business to tell you how to run your office. I have no right to tell them. I will argue with them whether or not it's chiropractic, just by definition. And if somebody wants to add a modality or they want to do nutrition, number one, be really well educated in it. So if you have a bachelor's degree that's one thing. The nutrition class I took, at school, that's not going to save anybody. So I have a team, I have a nutritionist. Listen, you want to eat right? Here's the person you need to talk to. They're the expert. You want the expert or you want the Walmart, which would be me. And so, I'm the expert in subluxation detection and eradication, but, nutrition, exercise, those things, here's the trainer at the YMCA. Fantastic. All in the world. Go with him. He'll get you a great exercise plan. Go to this person to eat right, because all that stuff's important, but you need to come to me to make sure everything you do is processed as appropriately and as constructively as possible. Okay. And then they say, okay.
Yeah. Which builds a greater community, right? Because then you're referring back and forth to the physical therapist and the trainer and all of that. And all of us stay in our lane. Like, I'm a chiropractor. This is what I do. You're a nutritionist. That's what you do. Over here. And I think then too, if you stay in your lane and you're an expert, then your training gets to grow and grow and grow and grow and grow in your lane. Like, it's not like you're trying to like make sure that you're staying an expert in chiropractic, but also over here, and then you got to do this, and then you got to do that. It's just like, it's too much. But what you went to school for was to be a chiropractor. So continue to train and grow. All right. So I have to make sure that, because I said, ask your questions and we will answer them. Here's Dr. Barry Hobbs' question.
Hey, Barry Hobbs.
Dr. Barry says, I have a question. Okay. How does Principle 16 affect me in my practice?
How does Principle 16
affect me in my practice?
I don't know. What's Principle 16, Barry?
Are you still with us, Barry? He's a jokester. Are you with us? Are you with us? No? All right, I guess if you don't stay with us, then you don't get your question answered.
Well, and it's because I'm actually, hang on a minute. I'm going to look it up.
I don't have it memorized. Who knows Principle 16?
Hang on, I can find it in a second.
Pop it in the comment section.
And that's why I want to indict myself from the comment I just made a little while ago. I mean, I can teach and talk about all of them. If people want a quick, easy reference to the principles, pureandpowerful.com, you can find them there.
I was thinking it'd be fun to do like a Facebook Live every day on one of the principles. And like, what's the application? Kind of like what you were saying you do with in your classroom, right? Like when you see one of the principles, erase, and then they have an empty, an empty page at the end. That would be kind of cool. Anyone who needs a Facebook Live topic, do the principles.
Yeah, that's probably our biggest challenge is, here we go. All right, now we got Principle 16, Barry. I'll tell you how to have some practice. So intelligence is in both organic and inorganic matter. universal intelligence gives force to both organic and inorganic matter. So what they're, whoop, hang on.
You're still good.
I'm still good?
Yeah.
Okay. I heard something in my ear. So, universal intelligence, what I know, now some of this is just going to be for the chiropractor to know exactly what they're doing. Do I have a conversation about the difference between organic and inorganic matter with my patient? But I know what's out there is that the reason there's this body of protoplasm in front of me is because there's an intelligence out there that's put it together. And because that intelligence has put it together, am I good?
Yeah.
Okay. And so because this protoplasm is being put together, I know, therefore, there's an intelligence that put it together, and therefore there's something that's able to keep it in its best state, its best expression of itself. And so that's what I'm going to tell. I can tell that to a patient. And I said, listen, does it make sense that you're a pretty organized system? Yes. And so there's an intelligence behind it. You just happen to be organic matter versus the computer that I'm looking at. And I'm not going to get into the computer having universal intelligence because that's not for the patient. But just principle 16 would be an opportunity to say your matter, because your matter that's clumped together in something we can definitively define as a human in most cases, then there's an intelligence behind it. And so does it make sense if that intelligence is organizing you, that intelligence is able to do so without interference? So there,
and
Barry.
Barry Hobbs says, "Booyah, Dooley."
There you go. I ate flaming cheese with Barry in Greektown in Detroit.
Oh, wow.
If you're ever in Detroit, hang out with Barry Hobbs. He knows all the good spots.
Oh, yeah. Barry. Well, I'm from Michigan, too.
Oh, there you go.
I'm a Spartan. Barry, where'd you go to school, Barry? Pop it in the comment section. I guess I don't know that. So, I just had a thought about the whole concept of when, like everyone, when you have your brand new baby, you're like, oh, this baby's so perfect. And then for the most part, in a couple of years, it's like the terrible twos, right? And then it's these years, and then it's the teenage years, and then it's on and on and on. And how, subluxation, when they're obviously most commonly kids are born subluxated, right? Subluxated daddy, subluxated mommy. And then like all of this stuff happens to them and they become more subluxated, just like they can all agree that sometimes they get like not maybe so nice along the time. That's what happens to our spine and our nerve system. And there's just like destruction inside. And that's why it's so important to be under regular chiropractic care. It's kind of like why it's so important to stay connected to your children. So you can have a great relationship with them forever, not as their friend, but as their Oh, Millikan University. I don't know where that is, Barry. Hey, Joe. All right. So I know I've taken up a bunch of your time and it's been so fun. I hope we do this again.
It's been a blast.
And I would love to do something with the principles. And I encourage any of you, if you don't know what to do for a Facebook Live, go to pureandpowerful.com, grab a principle and talk about it.
Yeah, I think that'd be great. And that's the big thing is, there's a ton of content. And like I said, I'm getting closer to where I have them memorized. But I think we can all just, at least if we know how to explain it, I think a lot of times when we're talking subluxation with our patient, we're talking the principles, even if we aren't aware of it, because they just fit. And so it just sort of helps. And, nowadays, I watch a movie, the Marvel movies are great because they're loaded with the principles. And so, showing those things, talking to the kids about that, right, that's this principle. Or have you ever said this? Yes, that's this principle.
Nice.
So just taking it off of the pages of Stevenson's introduction and just saying, here's how we use it. So what I'll do in class is, all right, here's the principles that we're doing. Say, 4 through 6. All right, you take principle 4 and you're talking to an accountant. You take principle 5 and you're talking to the working mom, and you take principle 6 and you're talking to a teenage athlete. What are you going to say? And so those are the exercises that we like to have in class, and that's something we can all do. Find the chiropractors in your area. we're not competing with anybody if we're seeing 12% of the population at best.
Amen.
So sit with your chiropractors and just drill and do these things.
Yeah.
Half the nice part about an hour drive to and from is I think about these things. One of the ways, traditionally, I don't know what your case history was at Logan, but ours is huge. And at Sherman, and that's been always the complaint. Well, why do we have to do this medical thing if we're the straight school? And for a while, my answer was because the CCE said so. That's the great fallback. But then I started thinking that's a garbage answer. I didn't like that when my parents told me that. And so I started thinking, well, if I'm the philosophy guy, I ought to be able to mirror or meld this into the chiropractic lens, because medicine uses x-ray, medicine uses palpation, they use range of motion. So those are just tools. They're just tools. So the case history, therefore, should be just a tool. And I started thinking about Principle 26, where universal forces are destructive until innate can make them constructive. And I started thinking that's what all those yes-nos are in their constitutional issues, is those are the universal forces that they've been under their entire life, which is why they're in the office. And if they got a whole bunch of yeses, then their care plan might be a little bit more intensive than somebody that doesn't, because they've been battling all these things. Not that I'm going to fix those things, but it's like, this is why you're subluxated and you're going to continue to be, because this is going on in your body. If you have a thyroid condition, that's an internal universal force that innate's got to figure out a way to deal with. So if you're dealing with these things, doesn't it make sense to have a nervous system free and clear of subluxation? And so that's a way to use a principle. And now the case history is not a medical thing that we're doing in chiropractic school, but it's a chiropractic thing that we're doing in chiropractic school, just using a principle.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. We're going to for sure have to have another conversation. Or maybe
Sure, glad to.
That'd be awesome.
Why not?
Hey, everyone, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Dr. Brian, thank you for joining us despite working at the school today and at your practice and now being with all of us. I really appreciate it. God bless you all. Have a wonderful evening, and we'll let you know again when we're going to go live. And I'll be sure to bring Dr. Brian back just as soon as I can.
Beautiful.
See ya.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Bye-bye.